It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
And welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Breakfast as we break it all down, all of your property news, real estate, of course, every day of the week, as heard on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Amazon. And look at that, today it is a Black Friday, September the 13th. And in just a moment, we are heading across to Melbourne, one of the exclusive suburbs there. Now, as we know, Sydney remains the most expensive city for property with a median dwelling value price of $1.18 million, but its lead over mid-sized capitals like Brisbane, Adelaide and Perth has narrowed significantly. Sydney's median is now only 35% higher than Brisbane's, a 49% premium over Adelaide's and 50.3% over Perth's. Now, the reason I'm mentioning that is the smallest gap in years. And CoreLogic tells us that over the past 5 years, national dwelling values have risen 47.9%, with Perth seeing a staggering 76.4% increase, Brisbane there on 71.5%, and Adelaide at 70.8%. Melbourne, meanwhile, has lagged with just a 19.8% rise. And key factors driving this shift includes demographic changes, housing supply differences, and affordability pressures in Sydney and Melbourne, leading to more rapid growth in the mid-sized capital. So it's a fascinating breakdown this morning. Well, let's take you off to Melbourne and to a very desirable suburb there called Brighton. And we are catching up with Sarah Korbel from Evoke Property. And Sarah, welcome to this Black Friday the 13th. I hope you're not too superstitious.
Hi, Craig. Thank you for having me. No, I'm actually not superstitious at all. I feel we make every day count and make it our own. I don't let any outside influences or superstitions impact how I go about my day. But it can be for some, so I totally understand.
Yeah, it's just all in the mind. I remember as a school kid having my hand read from a school teacher. I was a bit of a rebel at school, and he looked at my hand and he said, "Oh, looks like you do pretty well in life, but..." And I said, "What's the but? What's the but?" And he said, "Looks like you die at a fairly young age of 35. Imagine telling that to a 14-year-old, because my reaction was, wow, 35, that's brilliant, that's old.
Oh my goodness, well, you wouldn't be able to get away with doing that these days, but certainly that would have been quite terrifying.
But here's the rub with this story. I was out on my jet ski, aged 35. It was a little bit windy. The wind got up and I fell off the jet ski. The jet ski zoomed off, but it was like 200 meters and there were these massive swells. And what ran through my head was that school teacher telling me 35. I thought, this is the day.
Oh, no. Oh, dear, that would have been terrifying for you. But you made it through, Craig.
Yeah.
And dare I ask how old you are now?
A little bit older than 35. Yeah, very funny, but very scary at the time. So it just goes to show how somebody can get into your ear. Now, you're going to get into our ear, talking of that, about Brighton. Very, very popular, of course. It was once known as Dendy's Special Survey after Henry Dendy. What was that about? He owned quite a lot of property around the area.
He did indeed, and we actually have quite a prominent street named after him, obviously Dendy Street, and it really is the demarcation between Middle Brighton and South Brighton. It leads basically right down from Nepean Highway down to the beach. So Henry Dendy is very well known, and he owned a lot of land. I think we were talking about it before, around about, did we say 500 or 5,000?
Yeah, 5,000 acres.
Close to the beach it was, so it was would have been worth a lot back then.
All right, so let's talk about Brighton 2024. What is making Brighton a little bit different to other exclusive areas around Melbourne these days?
Brighton is quite a lifestyle suburb. People are drawn to Brighton because of the schools. We have a lot of very, very good private schooling and public schools available to families. Also, all the facilities, we're close to right on the bay there. So if you have an interest in swimming, going to the beach, we have the beach boxes. So it's a lifestyle destination. We have great shopping strips and shopping villages. We're close to the city. We can jump on the train. It takes 20 minutes to get into town. If you go south of Brighton, you've got all the other beautiful suburbs such as Hampton, Sandringham. Brighton separates itself, I think, because of the amenities and the facilities.
And what about the market at the moment? What's happening with those downsizes for you?
So we are seeing a lot of downsizing at the moment. A lot of families here in Brighton have been living in the same home for 40, 50, 60 years. And they are now at a point in their lives where they want to get on into a property that's single level or has less maintenance, less gardening. There is not a lot of opportunity for them to get into, for example, a single level house. So we're seeing a lot of apartments being built in Brighton, and certainly since there was a change in the zoning. So there's a lot of apartments that can be built now within a kilometre of a train station, which is really offering the solution to the downsizer. It is something that the downsizers really have to get their heads around, coming from a large family home on a block of, minimum 600 square metres, a 5-bedroom home. They're now having to visualise moving their personal belongings and the way they live into a much smaller space.
All right, so we are in Brighton this morning. We will come back in just a moment. We'll find out about the median snapshot price for houses and for units. Find out a little bit about the auction market as well. We'll do that after this.
We help to break down real estate every day to help you better understand the Australian property market. It's time to go back to the Real Estate Vault for this week's property comment.
And your report throws up this question. It's not timing the market that is important. It is the time spent in the market that really counts.
So our analysis really did support evidence for this argument, and what it really does showcase is you need to step back and look at property as a longer term investment. If you do that, you're really kind of viewing property as an asset that is that longer term investment. It's really hard to pick a trough. It's really hard to pick a peak. And when you take that step back, timing becomes much less important, and picking that peak and picking that trough.
You can join the conversation every week on the Real Estate Podcast.
And it is a Friday, Real Estate Black Friday, the 13th today. And we are talking to Sarah there in Brighton. Time to have a little bit of a look at the median price for houses at the moment, sitting at $3,100,000. And for those unit prices, $1,235,000. Gee, that unit price, Sarah, that's right up there, isn't it, in terms of unit prices across Australia in exclusive areas?
It certainly is, and we're seeing demand for these units actually increase because I guess buyers are moving around into different price categories. So once upon a time it was the first home buyer, but we're now seeing young families looking at units just due to affordability. So once upon a time they were looking perhaps at a standalone house, they're now looking at units as a starter home. It is pushing the first home buyers out to different suburbs and families into units.
And what's been happening with the buyer behaviour in your market? If you have a look maybe across the last 5 to 6 months, what's been happening in that space?
Buyers are due to the economic conditions, and especially in Brighton, we're seeing a lot of cautiousness enter the market. Due to the fact that prices aren't rising, there's a lack of urgency in the market. If a buyer misses out on a property, they're not so concerned. They will wait for the next one to come onto the market. So urgency is lacking. Buyers have time to make decisions. Buyers are far more discerning. In a heated market, they will put up with, objections with properties because they just need to get into the market and they need to buy. Whereas now, with the lack of prices increasing, buyers are perusing the market. If the property isn't close to what they are after, they will wait.
Okay, so that's pretty interesting. It's probably just what the market is doing in so many places right now. Buyers just have more time. And just on that note, looking at the auction market at the moment, you were telling me off air that you're kind of shying a little bit away from the auction market. So what's happening?
Due to the market conditions, auction isn't the best way to maximise a price for vendors. When we conduct a private sale or an expressions of interest campaign, we have more control over the pricing. Auction is great when we have a lot of competition. It really can optimise the result and the price for our vendors. When the market doesn't have that urgency and is lacking competition, what we're seeing is we may have one buyer or 1.5 buyers on a home. Running a private sale or an expressions of interest campaign, we can control the price. You see, Craig, when you go out and do an auction and it passes in, the neighbourhood and the market are privy of reserve prices and they can see firsthand that there is no buyer interest. With the current market conditions, that is not a good signal and we need to protect our vendor and our vendor's pricing. So a private sale is more discreet and we can negotiate privately with one buyer, and if that doesn't produce the result that we're looking for, then we can keep going. But it doesn't hinder a campaign or hinder our vendor's property at all.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, and you want to get all of those messaging, particularly on price point, at that right price. Otherwise, it tends to retreat and retrench and go backwards, although probably very easier said than done for an exclusive area like Brighton. Hey, Sarah, thank you so much for all of that information this morning. Enjoy your Black Friday the 13th, and thanks for coming on to the Real Estate Breakfast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Craig. Much appreciated.
Every morning from 6 a.m. across Australia, we deliver you the latest property news, commentary and predictions from Perth to Cairns and from Melbourne to Brisbane, 7 days a week, only on the Real Estate Podcast.
Perth's most popular suburbs have been flagged as high risk for property investors, appearing on a national blacklist. So what did you make of that yesterday?
Yeah, look, it speaks to the value of data. And looking through the list, the data has identified some suburbs that absolutely should be on that list in WA. Certainly towns like Port Hedland, which are single economic driver towns, regional towns that are purely driven by the supply and demand of rental properties. I would put that up the top of the list myself personally. But then you go down the list and you see something like Claremont or Subiaco, two of our premier suburbs, Subiaco being where our office is. It's a very tightly held, very highly regarded suburb with fantastic schools, and that's on the list. And so that's sort of, I'm always banging on about the idea of analysing data but then overlaying local knowledge, and this is really an example of where that hasn't been applied.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.